friends and families around the world, and welcome back to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias with Mike Benelli, and our guest today is making a name for himself both as an influential hockey person and player. He currently plays Division III hockey for Newman University, which, funny enough, is right down the street from me, and hails from Ancaster, Ontario. And what stands out about him the most is his uncanny ability to share his hockey journey, or as he puts it, his niche is the youth hockey player community, where he strives to, quote, help motivate, inspire, and educate those who are now in the shoes I once was. I love that. This is something we can absolutely get behind on this show. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Luke Croucher to the show. Luke, welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Lee, and thank you, Mike, as well, for having me today. I'm super excited to see how this conversation goes and all the deep questions that we get to dive into today. So I thank you. It's an honor to be here.
No, thanks for being here, Luke. Again, I said before the show, I've been watching your stuff for a while, and I love it. You have an approach to the game, but most importantly, the expression of that game that I think really, really resonates to the younger audience. What's cool for me, man, is that, again, I'm older than you, but you're saying things I wish someone had said to me when I was younger, and I think that's what resonates with me. But I want to start here, man. Your parents are both from the UK. You grew up in Ontario. You now go to college right outside Philadelphia. That's a hockey journey if I've ever heard one. What drove you to play college hockey in this area?
Um, Honestly, like if I break it all down, it was like really it only came down to like a couple offers. I knew one day, like I was like, okay, I really wanted to play college hockey. And obviously it's a privilege to do so. I always tell my like friends, they're like, oh, you're still playing, whatever. I'm like, yeah, it's a privilege to still play. And I think the main reason why I ended up coming down to Philadelphia was simply because like this was the team that wanted me the most. Credits to Coach Mountain, who's no longer with Newman now, but he's now down the East Coast. I think he just landed a job there as a head coach. I think it was Greensville, but in the East Coast. So congrats to him, and thanks for having the faith in me in order to do so. I didn't know the journey would like quite work out like this, and obviously, like any kid growing up, I think this is one big point that we could even touch on today is a lot of people have like the stigma of like Division III hockey, like, oh, you're playing D3, you're not playing D1. No, I did not make Division 1, but I like to say like I act like I'm a Division 1 player.
You do.
I
Yeah,
think
your
that's the
day in the
big thing.
life posts are like that, man. You can see you're putting the work in.
Exactly, and it's I think that's like one of the biggest takeaways is that it doesn't really matter what level. It's about like what do you put in to your work every day, and mastering your craft and doing what you can because you never know. Like a lot of guys, like after Division 1, it really is all about like after it's all said and done, you guys all could be done college, and some guys who play Division 1 might retire. The guys who play Division 3 might continue to keep playing, and I think that's like the mindset is like, what do you think long term?
Right.
And I could see myself playing another like 2 or 3 years after Division 3, and maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. I don't know where life's gonna take me right now, but I'm just worrying about getting better as a player and also helping out. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, Luke, none of us know where life's going to take us. It's one of those big
Yeah.
things that as you get older,
Yeah.
you realize, man, you're never going to know where life takes you. One of the cool things I do want to tap on that stigma of Division 3, as you put it. I think for a lot of parents, everybody's like D1 or Quebec Major Junior. It's like, look, if you can play for any team after high school, ACHA, D3, D1, the NAL, anything, any of those junior leagues, that's awesome. That is a huge deal. You're part of the minority already if you play post high school hockey. Now, obviously, you want to play at the best level you can, but if you need to be D1 to give everything, that that says something about you, right? I don't think Division 1, Division 3, whatever. If you're going to put the time in, you're going to put the time in. It doesn't matter what level you're at. And that's definitely part of your message. I alluded to it a minute ago. Your day in the life posts, you are putting the work in. I mean, your life revolves around this and your academics. If I'm not mistaken, you're like an all academic all-star as well, right? So
I,
you're doing all of it.
yeah, not bad, not bad. Yeah, thank you.
No,
No,
no
but
worries, man.
I think what to the point, Luke, you're making too is that you're not your kind of focus on what you're doing on social media and a lot of the stuff you're doing as far as like a mentor is not really for 19 and 20-year-olds. This is for the kids that are bringing in that journey. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of, players that follow you and say, wow, I really loved what he's doing. And, whether you're playing at Division 1 or Division 3 or wherever, ACHA, it doesn't, I think the message is, though, what you're asking kids to do, and the path that you're helping young players, from the, like that, 10 to 18-year age group, is going to help them no matter what their path is. And I think that's, if you don't do the things you're doing, and think about what you're doing it without the support of a Division 1 program. I mean, you're doing without all the staff and all the extra pieces that go into what a lot of these, basically pro athletes are getting. And you're, building that on your own, which is really a testament to what you're doing. But I think it's great for other kids to say, no matter where you're at, you could be in a big AAA organization or some small, small town team. You can make the best of it by just following what the best practices are in your age group.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. It really is just obviously a privilege to play, but you got to keep putting in your work every single day. I always think, I always give like analogies to kids of, um, it's almost like your time, like whenever you think your breakthrough is coming, is like almost like a piñata. A
It's
lot
a
of
good one.
kids like always like the first like couple kids like they show up to the locker room, they go through like 2 or 3 practices, and I always think it's like the 2 or 3 first whacks at the piñata. It never breaks. But then there's like those kids who come in who are like the 7th or 8th kid who ends up showing up, but they just stick around for the piñata to break. Um, and those first 2 kids who like only practiced a couple times, they don't get to see the rewards because they just didn't stick around long enough. And sometimes that's the main thing, is that you just didn't do the simple, boring tasks of like skill development, power skating. Power skating is one of them because every kid hates it. I was built on power skating, but you just didn't stick around long enough to see the reward. And I think that's like a huge thing, is just stay at it. Stay at it. Very simple. The boring tasks will help you over the long period of time.
You hear a lot of pro athletes, some of the greatest of all time, talk about the fundamentals, and that they continually practice the fundamentals, and that is the foundation for everything else that they've built. And we're kind of living in a time now where social media dictates that, Michigan's, which I'm not poo-pooing the Michigan, but amazing, crazy plays become the I need to be able to do that. When the truth is, man, you just need to know how to skate well and take a good shot. And those foundational elements, as you just said, are so important. If you're not willing to put the time in for those, I don't have to say it, there'll be repercussions, right? I mean, you got to put the time into those fundamental aspects of the game if you really want to get somewhere with it.
100%. 100%.
So, Luke, I want to ask you this. You did a great interview with our friends over at the Hockey Think Tank. And we always like to share things with the parents that listen to this show. And one of the great phrases that you shared was that you're not taught lessons, you capture lessons. I thought that was a really impactful statement. And again, we have a lot of parents that listen to this show that I know are frustrated at times, myself included, that their kids may not be listening to them. So, can you dive into the capture part of this, and how, while your kids may not show it, they're most likely listening to you?
Yeah, 100%. I think like the biggest thing I was like talking about with parents, because like they never like aside from like the odd exchange, like my mom would obviously have, me and my mom would obviously have, but um most of the time, how I learned, I always think like this one thing from my dad is he's a very good cook, um but he had never showed me how to do anything. Never showed me how to like cut a tomato, cut, whatever, how to dice things, nothing. It was literally just the product of me watching him in the kitchen and then just
Right.
trying to like almost like mimic what you do. And that's why I always like come back to that, your lessons are caught, they're not taught. You don't physically have to say those words. And I think that's like a big one. And I think of my mom too, is like the reason why I go to the gym every day is because I see my mom go to the gym every day.
Right.
It's not because, she says, hey, you need to do this. No, it's more so like she does it. It's like you find your role models in your life. And those are things like, I'm obviously grateful for, is that I can follow some amazing people who are in my own home. But I think that's like a huge lesson as a parent. You want them to
Right.
do something, like you got to be doing it too. And that's why, like for me, it's like as an influencer, I got to practice what you preach. You got to like, I have to raise my standards in order to, preach a standard. So that's kind of the philosophy around that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the first things you learn as a parent is that your kids are always watching you. They're never listening to you, but they're always watching you. And then
Yeah.
I think, like even me now that my teenager is driving a little bit, like I'll see little nuances of the frustration that I probably presented when I was driving. And I'm like, oh, that's a really bad lesson to
Get
learn.
out of the way,
You
man.
can't do that. Well,
You
you
got
always do
so
that. I get, but I've been
yeah.
driving for 40 years. You've been
What do you
driving
Yeah,
for
do?
yeah.
4
What
months.
are you doing? What is he
Right.
doing?
But I think it's just, so it's one of those things where, and I think this even goes to coaches, right? I mean, if your coach is a screamer and a yeller and a crazy person on the bench, and all of a sudden the fans get into it and you get into it and everybody loses their minds. I mean, it's just a matter of being not only a great role model, but presenting and acting the way you want the players that you're working with to act like. And if you can't expect a standard, I don't think, you can't expect a standard out of your team that you're not reflecting. And you can always see like a team that's undisciplined and out of control most likely has, maybe it's not the head coach, but somebody on that bench is undisciplined and out of control.
100%. I
Well,
couldn't agree with you more.
I'll say this too. A lot of times in my work with team building, when I interview, if you will, for a coaching job or an opportunity, it's a two-way interview. And I will, if a coach asks me, well, do I have to follow these rules that we're setting up? That is a massive red flag for me to work with that team because yes, you have to follow the rules that we are creating for the team, or what is the point if it's not at the top? But to your point, Luke, that statement you made about capturing really made me reflect on my own life with my own parents, and all the things that I captured from them. And again, for the listeners, if you're thinking about this too and you have the opportunity, you should definitely reach out to your parents and thank them for that. But one of the real world experiences that I had, Luke, that I'll share with you just to prove your point is that I remember the principal from my school came up to me and said, "Oh man, your kids, they know how to lead a team. They are just leaders in their rooms and they want what's best for the team." And I remember thinking, "Look, I don't see that at home," but they're watching that. They principal even said, "Man, he's doing what you do. She does what you do." So a lot of times, parents, and this is the point I'm making, Luke, you might not see it. You might not see that they're watching you and they're learning from you, but they are good and bad habits, right? First time your kid puts out a curse word, he didn't learn that from someone else. He learned that from you. And you can deny it, but he most likely learned it from one of you, right? And one of the fun parts about parenting, Luke, is that your kids teach you a lot about yourself. And there's many moments you go, "Oh, that is totally my fault that he learned how to do that." But that's part of the journey as well.
Yeah.
So, Luke, I want to say this: the information you provide on your channel is just outstanding, right? But I think the beauty of it is your voice and your tone, right? You speak directly to the young dreamers out there that aspire to play hockey at a high level. It feels that way. And again, your channel, like I'm 40, but reinvigorates the mindset that I had when I was 16 years old, wanting to make it, right? And that's a rare thing that I see. So I wanted to ask you, what spawned you to do this, and how did you find that voice?
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, like I had a spark in wanting to do social media for like a good like 3 or 4 years. I just never really knew exactly how I was gonna do it. And then I was like, you know what? Like maybe I just throw my camera on the ice and see kind of like what kind of goes from there. Obviously, you get a little bit of backlash off the hop. Um,
True.
like they're like my teammates are like, "Why are you bringing a camera? Like, what are you doing here? What's going on?" And I was like, "Okay, you know what? Like, let's just see." Because I have a lot of people don't know. I have a pretty decent background since I was like 12 years old. I was teaching those Timbits kids hockey all the way up until now. I've been coaching, and a lot of people don't see that because I never pulled my camera out for that, right? I feel like the this social media era now involves you bringing out your camera everywhere. I don't really like to bring it out everywhere. I wish I could show you more. Everyone only sees about maybe 0.1% of what I actually,
True.
do on a daily basis. And I wish I could capture it all, but I simply can't. And back to my point is that I've been in this kind of field, and I kind of already knew the flow of like words and like how I already communicated to kids on the ice, and I was like, well, kids always like that, so I was like, hey, like shot in the dark, maybe I can talk to another kid that's,
Right.
not directly in front of me, but I guess directly in front of a phone. So
Well, you are, going back to what you said earlier too, it's kind of like the pinata thing, right? If you put a couple videos out and just stopped, you never know what was going to happen. If we just did a couple episodes of this podcast, the first few episodes of this podcast, I remember getting 12 listens, which, I mean, our audience is massive now, but we kept with it and it got us to where we're going. And then the more reps you do, the better you get. I mean, but I want to tap on this even more and pull a thread on it, Luke, because some of your segments, like I saw the segment you do now, what coaches never tell you, right? And I love that because it's not a negative. It's, oh, here's some information that can really help you. Just the title of that, what coaches never tell you, is a brilliant title, right?
yeah.
So I just tell me about how does it go through your head? Does something happen? You go, you know what? I should tell kids this because it wasn't taught to me and it's just there. Do you just do it on the spur? Do you take notes? Like how do you
Um,
push forward with your content?
Good point. Honestly, like the last 2 years, like ever since I knew like something worked, um, just been like sporadically trying a bunch of different stuff because I know at one point like I'll kind of have a arsenal of like, okay, I know what content works. So right now I'm like like a lot of people don't know this. I'm literally in still test trial phase. I'm literally just like testing a bunch of content, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. For those who want to become influencers or want to like have some content that actually works, I think series are the best thing for any type of influencer. Like, for example, a podcast is still considered a series. It's the
Yes.
same
Yeah.
format over and
I hope
over
so.
again.
Yeah.
Where I get held back in my content is that I want to do a bunch of different stuff. That's why I basically split up my social media
You
accounts
did.
now.
Yeah.
I want to do a
Yeah.
lot more day in a life, a lot more what I eat in a day that I haven't shown anyone, and then I want to do a lot more like hockey training, hockey specific. So I have a hockey audience, and then I have a little bit of both because I'm not going to be a hockey player forever, and I know that. But I know if I can document the process, I'll have
Hmm.
a balance of both. But that's basically how I've just kind of thought about my content and how it's, I guess going in that
No,
case.
it's going. I mean,
And that's how it
uh,
formulates.
you're a
Yeah,
guide, Luke. You're a guide for these young kids and other people too.
Yeah. It's
it's
honestly
just it,
sporadic. Like, you guys ever like go in the shower or go for a walk and just like the ideas are just
Oh,
like fun?
all the time,
Um,
all the
how do
time.
that's
you
just I
guys
mean,
kind of approach that? I'd
well,
ask.
I mean, I just thought my question would be for you real quickly. It's just like, so I can't, this is the age gap, right? Like, I can't imagine some guy walking into my locker room saying, listen, I'm a social media influencer and everything we're going to do now is going to be filmed and taped and critiqued. But on the positive side, I mean, maybe you could tell us like how much influence do you get from your teammates? Like, are they
Yeah,
on
it's a
board?
great
Like,
question, Mike.
do they get all pumped up about, oh my God, Luke, you got to do this, or wow, that would be some great content. And you're like, well, then it's an interesting dynamic when you're not a social media influencer, like a fashion person who's just by yourself. You're in a team, like you're in a group of men that have to work together. And I mean, how do you balance that, editing your content to not negatively affect your teammates and vice versa? Like, how do you pump up your teammates? Be like, hey, listen, we're gonna blow this up, and they're like, listen, dude, I don't want a part of this. Like, that's not
Yeah,
who I am. So it must be a big difference in being an influencer on a team than being an influencer as an individual.
1,000%. I always find it easier to make content in the summer than I do in the winter because I'm around like teammates. So you always have to be like, I'm not afraid to take risks, but I'm also like, I also have to walk a fine line
Hmm.
because you don't want to, and don't get me wrong, I've crossed the line a couple times where I've, maybe TikTok some teammates based on what I posted, but that's that. If I didn't make that mistake or I didn't have that failure, I wouldn't have known what worked, what didn't. So you kind of have to have a little bit of like you might step on a couple people's toes, and that's totally okay, and it's a part of the process. But at the same time, like now I'm starting to understand. Okay, like okay, this is what works, this what doesn't, this is what, this is probably out of bounds. This is probably good. This is what we can roll with. So it's always like, I think, like I said, these first couple of years have been just throwing darts blind at the board. You don't know whether you might miss the board and hit somebody. And that was kind of like the the thing that I've learned the most is that too. When you do post these things, you got to take responsibility for them. So if it does step on anyone's toes, you got to be like, yeah, like I see
And
where you're
again,
coming from.
I think as a coach, I mean, I would be like back my young self as a college coach, I would be horrified to have an influencer in my locker room, like getting, and I don't use the word chirping, but if getting, my team now is
Oh
exposed
yeah,
to you, right? Like, oh, this is the guy. This is this is the guy that's gonna, I'm gonna be on his, his thousands and thousands of followers are going to be a part of this losing streak this weekend or winning streak or whatever it is. And I think that's, to me as a coach, and I think that's where you must have, obviously the coaches you've had now for the last couple of years have to be open to this, have to be modern coaches, have to understand like this is a new thing that players do, right? I mean, like it's just
People
all,
do. Yeah.
we just have to evolve in knowing that, listen, this is a great thing for you to do for your career, whether you're a hockey player or not. But it's another part of society, a part of the workforce, right? Like if somebody was told me like, hey, do you know
yeah,
that social media influencing is a job? If like, what the hell are you talking about? This is ridiculous. But to watch and now have teenagers and have kids that I work with that are so influenced by this, that are really, this is a huge piece of their how they learn. I think that's where, a coach has to watch you and say, oh wow, I could really take a lot from what this kid is a young man is doing, and I can be a little bit more modern myself and a little more progressive myself and not fight this, but help to harness it and use it.
yeah. And that's a huge thing too, is like finding a way like where it's like beneficial to both sides too. I always like say that with like, especially even when you're just like, it's like a negotiation. Like you want, like obviously you want the best case for yourself, but you need some type of win-win for it to like happen long term. So it's always like trying to find a healthy balance of okay, like hey, like you should be posting this more than this. um, so it's, yeah, definitely, you have to walk a fine line. You have to be able to take some risks early on, but now that I have taken those risks, I know like, okay, what's good, what's bad, what's out of bounds, and what I can now like really like focus on and help kids out with. So
No,
that's how.
you gotta have pretty thick skin. I can't imagine the some of the flack that you get.
Yeah,
I have a
early
field day
on.
with you, but I think that's the modern player. Like the ability to know that this is just, all part of it is really an interesting thing for me.
Yeah,
Well,
I
and
agree.
look, I'll say this too. What I love about your approach, you're saying brilliant things like win-win, finding those fine lines. The key with you, buddy, and this is why I think people like you really succeed, is that your channel, your broadcasts, your posts have a service nature to them. You are trying to serve others by sharing the information you have. It's not me, 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 me. And even in the ways that I watch at your day of the life things, it's, hey, come take this journey with my teammates and I. It's not about you. The mistake that I think that social media makes, and I'll say this, look, I'm an elder millennial. I was there at the dawn of the Facebook. I was there at the dawn of the
Yeah, yeah,
social media. I was in college when these things were made. So I've kind of had this my entire life. And I have an understanding of it, in my opinion, at least as much as someone can. And what I find is this: when it becomes a human highlight reel, there's only so much people can take of that, because at the end of the day, something inside you tells you that's not real, right? It's not all highlights all the time. And what I love about your channel is you don't just share human highlights, right? Even like little things in your videos I've noticed where you'll say, I was too tired to record this next part, so I didn't record it because I was tired, right? Like that kind of honesty is not normal. And
yeah,
now the video never ends on that, but
yeah,
things like that of like, no, I'm working hard and I didn't want to pick up the camera at that moment. There's a realism to it. So I think that in terms of, where we're going, as Mike said, look, there's not a future where this stuff's not happening now. This is just the reality we live in now. And for parents who kind of scoff at it, I'm like, guys, this is the world in 2024. It is not going back. We're not going to just get rid of our phones and our cameras. But there is a responsibility. And I think that, you also serve as a role model to young people, not just from a hockey standpoint, and really a growing up standpoint, but as someone who does this. You're a service-based channel, in my opinion. Am I wrong in assuming that, or is that something that's on your radar?
No, I definitely think like I always thought like give more than you take.
Right.
Always like it doesn't matter like what it is. Obviously, like you can build more that you feel like you deserve the more you do and put in more reps like when it comes to the game of like hockey. But I've always been like a kid. I don't even know if I've released this series yet, but I'm releasing something of like, okay, what are the three things I should have done differently if I
Right.
wanted to play Division 1 or
That's
something like
brilliant.
that. And the
I
one
mean,
point I make,
making yourself vulnerable like that, Luke, that is uncommon for someone your age. That's huge.
I appreciate that. And basically, I like I always like struggled um, giving the puck away too much, like not like really focusing on like actually what I'm capable of doing. Like I'm always the pass first type of guy. Obviously, I've slowly evolved to like, hey, you got to get a little bit more selfish, and that's like one of the points I do make.
Hmm.
But you got to be you can be both. You can be selfish and selfless. You know what I mean? Like you can be a team player, but you can also understand that you have what it takes to take a puck to the net or shoot on a 2-on-1 and still making the pass instead of making the pass. Um, those things matter in the long run.
They do.
You got to be confident in your ability, but you also got to understand, hey, there's times, where you got to take it on your own, and there's times where you got to use your teammates around you, and finding that balance
Well,
is.
it's funny how the game and what you're talking about mimics life or even mimics what you're doing. So, for example, I do think it's important that as you get older, players know maybe their niche or what they're succeeding at, right? Like this is the part of the game you're good at, but you can't only focus on that because then you become not a well-rounded player. You look at your channel, you're saying, "Oh, I found a bit of a niche here," but you look at you, I'm trying this, I'm trying that, I'm looking at this. So you're approaching this the same way that you play the game. But even to your point, from a hockey standpoint, the work's never done. Even if you feel like you've mastered something, it doesn't stop there. That's not how this works, right? But that message coming from you to these kids is super important because I've had kids say, but I can do a Michigan. And I'm like, that's great, man. but you
Yeah.
can't do a crossover well. You know what I mean? Like you should always be expanding your game. Um, Luke, on that point, and again, we make sure people check out your channel. It's at Luke Crouch A, right? It's not the full word.
Yeah. Yeah.
LukeCroucha. I said that right.
Yeah.
All right.
Perfect.
Make sure you check him out for some of these segments that he's talking about because we could do a whole episode on them alone. But Luke, one thing I want to talk about, we speak about mental fitness a lot on this show. You kind of alluded to this a minute ago. I did want to ask you what some of the hurdles you've had to jump over are in your career thus far, but also how they helped to get you where you are today. You've been unabashful, excuse me, at saying things like this on your channel. I wish I knew this. I wish I had done this. This is something I had to deal with. Just would you share with our audience maybe a few things that you had to go through in your career that you've reflected on now?
This is a good one. So the first thing I think of is when I was a 16-year-old. So back when I was 16, this is kind of like I guess like before minor midget. So go back to my 14, 15, 14, 15-year-old years. My 13-year-old year, I've had probably one of the best years of my life. Thought I was on top of the world. My 14, 15 years come, and I was just like swiped out of any confidence I ever had. Reason for it is because like I didn't hit my growth spurt, but everyone else did, and I was like, why am I not as good as I once was? Like what is going on? And long story short, didn't really play much in my 14, 15-year-old year when I played AAA, or at least I didn't feel like I did, or it didn't have that impact that I wanted to. Um, so then I took and part ways. I went to a prep school for a year because I needed some type of change of environment. I played for the Hamilton Huskies AAA organization for 7 years, 8 years in a row, ever since it was like Major Adam, always up to I guess U15 now they call it. But that 15-year-old year was just a confidence building year, and then that year a bunch of guys got drafted. I finished the year. I thought I have a really good year, and um, right in my backyard is the Hamilton Bulldogs. They even affiliated out of the Ancaster rink that I live literally next door to. And I didn't get invited to rookie camp. And I was like kind of shocked. I was like how all like the past players I ever played with, they ended up going to this rookie camp. So that kind of like, fired me up pretty good. So throughout that whole summer, I absolutely worked my butt off. I said, okay, this is the time I need to actually get serious about getting into the gym. Like kids don't realize, like if they just did it 2, 3 years earlier,
Mm,
their efforts would have just compounded. They don't like that's the understanding is like your growth ends up just like it compounds over time. It gets bigger and bigger, and habits. This is the thing I'm gonna kind of get to is that your habits are so hard to break when you start when you get them. Like think about it like when you wake up in the morning, you probably do the same 3 or 4 things
hmm.
every single morning. Like for me, I might, go for a walk. I might brush my teeth. I might brush my teeth and shower the exact same way and, shower the same parts of my body. That's why habits are so important. So, not to drag it along, but fast forward, I said, okay, I'm just going to get to the gym every single day. I'm going to try this. Just see what it does. Okay. It doesn't matter what it takes. Long story short, August comes around. I play in this 4-on-4 league. A guy by Matt Turk, he was, I think, the head scout of the Hamilton Bulldogs at the time. I get an official invite as a free agent to be a part of the Hamilton Bulldogs um, main camp. And I was like, I didn't think it was possible. And the reason why I say this is that a lot of kids right now, it's July, what's July 7th or 8th, and they think like a lot of them don't take action because they think their dreams are way too far away from themselves. That's what stops them from actually doing something. When they realize, like, if you just put your head down for like 3 to 6 months, everything that you want can most definitely happen, but it all revolves around your habits. Um, Obviously, there's an extended part of the story that I'm still trying to kind of gather. In my 18-year-old year, I left the gym that I was working out at, and I built a habit about showing up at that gym, and I built a gym in my own home.
Hmm.
And the problem was is why I didn't stay as consistent throughout my 17, 18-year-old year, and I kind of like took a step back because I didn't realize like in order to get to the gym more, I just have to build the habit around going to the gym. You don't need to have the thing like the gym itself. You need to have the habit of doing it.
That's a
So
great
that's
point.
kind of like a very
No, listen,
side
dude, that
comments, but long
here
and prolonged.
it's funny, Luke, because my next question was going to be, what do you wish you had told your younger self? But here's the deal. You're right. Building those habits at 12, 13, 14, and not 18, 19, 20. I mean, that's years of development right there. It's funny. I'm going to equate this both ways. You hear about the greats in any sport, like Sidney Crosby comes to mind right now as someone. He was outside skating. Remember they got that video of him skating and practicing outside, like right before a game, and people were kind of surprised, like, what's he practicing for? This guy has been doing that every day his entire career. He's a voracious trainer. People know that about him. And you look at Kobe Bryant, same thing, was up before all his teammates. What's funny is you don't even have to look at the best, the McDavids, the Crosbys, right? You can look at guys like you in college. They're doing this work too. And that is one of the separators from kids that achieve goals and dreams and those that don't. I think it was Denzel Washington. He said something like, dreams without goals won't happen. Right. And if anyone thinks that you can just snap your finger, as talented as a McDavid or a Crosby or a Croucher is, it doesn't just happen because you're talented. It happens because of the habits, the fundamentals, and the ability to get up and do the work that needs to be done. Right. And again, the habit could be 500 shots in your garage every day. The habit can be going to the gym every day. There's nothing stopping you from doing these habits. And I always like to say this too. It's not a lack of resources. It's a lack of resourcefulness. You do not need the top training aids. You don't even need 500 pucks. You need one, right? It's what are you willing to do, right? Mike and I didn't have any training aids when we were a kid. They didn't exist. We had to make our own, right? And we found a way to practice outside. We did it. We figured it out. So for the parents listening, one more thing I have to add on to this. We've talked about this before. You can't force your kids to do this. You can't create it for your kids. You can only cultivate it. As Luke said, capture. Saw his mom go to the gym every day. That's a healthy parenting habit that has now gone to him. Saw his dad cooking. Now you're a nutritionalist, basically. We haven't talked about that. That'll be another episode as well. But you're heavy into nutrition. Your dad served in the military. I'm sure that had a lot to do with regimen and understanding things and respect. So these are the ways, parents, that we can share with our kids those types of habits. But if you're not doing them, you can't fully expect them to do them. And you can't force them. Luke, I always tell this story on this show about how I used to, my dad and I have had a great relationship, but I remember the day when I was 14 years old, he came up to me and he said, I'm not going to tell you to go outside and practice your shot anymore. And I was almost like, why? Why won't you do that? I like that you tell me to practice. He says, if you want this, you'll just do it. I shouldn't have to tell you. And every day after that, my entire time playing, no one had to tell me to go practice or go work hard, to the point people were making fun of me for working so hard, which I didn't care about. But that's the point. That's the difference maker. So I love that you're sharing stories like that with our audience, with our parents. And I love the overarching kind of topic of this episode is you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. Everybody wants to know, where's it going to end up? Where's my kid going to go? What are they going to do? What's the ROI? Just live in the damn moment and enjoy the process, because the process, as you said, Luke, it ends. All roads, every one of them leads to adult league. Every single one. I play adult league at the rink. This kid plays college hockey for now. Newman's getting a new ice rink. That's awesome. But I play at the rink he plays at. I would say my adult league team is probably not as good as Newman. All right. I would not expect Newman to challenge us anytime soon. But sorry, I didn't mean to get on a soapbox. I just love what you're saying, man. You are wise beyond your years, kid. I hope you know that.
I appreciate that, and thank you for sharing those kind words to me, as well as Mike as well. Thank you. I really do appreciate it.
Well, look, Luke, I'm going to say
I honestly didn't expect anything to come of it, honestly, when I started out.
Well, that's probably why it's
are.
succeeding, buddy, is there was no motive. I told you it's a service channel. And look, Luke, I'm going to say it again. When I watch your videos, it makes me feel like I did when I was chasing that dream at 15. There's not many people that have done that, right? I think you tapped into something there that's really cool. Look, before we go, we only have a few minutes. I did want to give you the opportunity here. You've recently started a free hockey community via school called My Hockey Training. I would love for you just to tell the audience about that and maybe what your goals are long term here. I don't even know what you're studying at Newman now that I mentioned it.
Yeah. I study. So this is like way left field. I study accounting at Newman. A
Wow.
lot of people don't
That
know
is way
that.
left field. I wasn't expecting that. I
Um,
was thinking like entrepreneurship or something like that, the way you're talking.
right? They just opened up an entrepreneurship program there, and I'm kind of like, I always got to fight against them for internships because I'm like, oh, like you got to do some type of accounting, but I'm like, well, I don't really want to
Yeah.
do much
Well, you're
accounting.
built for entrepreneurship. I'll tell you that right now. But go
Um,
ahead. Go ahead.
so basically, I also minor in strength and conditioning, so I'm actually going through that process. I kind of like switched how I want to do that and all that good stuff. But I realized like, hey, like if I'm gonna provide fitness knowledge, I better like just instead of just doing it and showing you guys like fancy videos, like I gotta actually know the knowledge behind it.
Right.
So with this free hockey training community, I call it the My Hockey Training Community. I'm honestly just trying to make it a safe haven for like hockey players who just want their questions asked. A lot of the time, Instagram DMs and messages are like so hard to like keep on top of. I keep that for like social networking and more so like business opportunities and stuff like that. So I've moved everything to this platform where they'll have like classrooms, calendars, and right now I'm running a 7 day calendar. So every day of July and also a little bit, very little bit of August, I'm hosting a free calendar. So every day there's like a half an hour to a 45-minute event, whether that's like, so Mondays are like motivational Mondays. So it's just like Q&A stuff. Just like if we were to sit here and just ask, hey, I'm struggling with this. Here's my 2 cents. Here's what the rest of the audience says. And
Right.
the whole goal is just to honestly build a community that's like pretty fired up about, having fun with the process. At the same time, I have classroom settings. I'm actually building a stick handling program right now.
That's awesome.
I'm in the midst of like having it monetized slash um, a free community because at the end of the day, like people don't realize like how much work it takes to actually build something like this. Like I've definitely bit my tongue a bit. I've sacrificed this summer to like not work at all and build out this community. So
Right.
I'm biting myself on the lip to do this. But knowing that if this works, it's going to set me up for, set not even myself up, but players for the rest of their careers. They're going to know what to do, what they need to do, how they do it, all the programming that they need. So building out some stick handling programs, workout programs, and I have that 7-day calendar that I'm just trying to build some buzz around the community, get questions asked, and hopefully it helps them going into their season.
Well, we'll definitely cut this clip for you and we'll share it because I said anytime we can help someone young like you try and accomplish what they're going to do. But I'm going to tell you this too, Luke, just as someone who's been down this road too, whether it works or not, it's going to work for you because the stuff that you're learning, the sacrifices you're making, it takes an uncommon passion. Most hockey players understand what I'm talking about, but it takes an uncommon passion and drive to believe I'm going to try something, I'm going to do it. And the people that try and do things like this succeed long term. It doesn't, like I said, whether this one does or not, and I hope it does, it's not going to stop you from dreaming. It's not going to stop you from pushing forward. That's just a part of who you are. That's in your DNA. That's why I think you're succeeding at the things that you're doing as a hockey player, as an influencer, as a teacher, as a student, as a human, because you're not afraid to dream. You're not afraid to fail, right? Or the fear of failure does not overcome your need to do it, to just do the work. That's why you're successful in my eyes, right? And you'll continue to be successful because of that.
I appreciate it so much, and I thank you guys really for having me on here. I'm glad I could share the message, and one day, hopefully, I can do the interviewing on the other side of the table and have my own podcast. But obviously, one brick at a time, one
Yeah.
brick at
Well,
a time.
if you need any help with us, let us know. We'll be here to help you with that, man. We like to enable good people. But Mike, anything before I close this out, buddy?
No, I mean I'm a newbie to the Instagram
He's Gen
site,
X. No, I'm just kidding. I hate labels.
and just I think it, but I am looking for things all the time, and recommending places for players that I work with just to go and check out, and kind of to your point, like maybe there's a voice that you like as a player. It doesn't have to be the one person. Like there's always different people presenting in different ways. And then finding that person that you like, you feel comfortable with, that is offering different means to reach out and get better, is all what all these players need to do. I mean, all these kids have access to their phones. I always say, use it in a good way. If you're going to be
Responsible, yeah.
if you're watching videos on hockey and you're getting the joke of my younger guy, my 11-year-old, is always, when it's bedtime, I'll hear down the hall, I'm like, you got to get to bed. He goes, oh no, I'm watching hockey. And my wife like, oh, it's hockey. I guess it's okay to watch it. So but again, it's just one of those things where if you're a player, you're listening to this on the car ride home, or you're with your parents. I mean, if you find, get a chance to take a look at Luke's site, and if you have a connection there, great. Watch it and grow with you. And if you don't, you don't. And I think that's just the beauty about having all these different influencers and people that are taking their time. And I can't imagine what goes into setting a camera up and making a scene and resetting this up and making
It's work, Mike. It's a lot of work.
That's why nobody's following. Nobody's following me around with a camera.
I follow you, Mike. I take that to heart.
I just go here, and Caitlin just sets all this up for us, so it makes it easy for me. But I mean, I think it's just like, for what you're doing and putting this all together, to your point, it takes a lot of work and the effort you're putting into it. And I think that, other parents and players that get to, use this service really can benefit from it. And I think it's just another great way for players to develop.
It's bang on. That's bang on. I guess the last thing I would ask is like, is there a topic that you think I should tackle that you might have?
Oh, he's reversing the interview on us. So you are going to be a podcast host one day. I can tell you, Luke, what I find is the number one concern of youth athletes right now is mental health and mental fitness. And I think that there's very little, this goes into the work that I do too. There's very little out there to help them understand their feelings, understand their emotions, and identify them. I think sometimes when you're young, and you talked about it when you were after 13, that feeling that grips you of unconfidence or whatever it is, a lot of times you don't realize that's a temporary thing. That feeling will end. When you're 12 years old, you think it's going to last forever. You don't know how to get out of it. You don't even know it's happening, that you're in your head. So I think that anything you can do to express to the young players of, you're going to have this emotion and this is one way to deal with that, or how to identify it, and what it means, after a bad game, good game, you look, feeling great can be equally as, a tough, you think you're invincible. So I think anything in that realm, especially from someone your age, is really helpful. I don't think we talk about it enough. I think too many young people construe mental fitness as weakness. But I do think that tide is changing very quickly. And I think you could have a role in that.
Yeah. Awesome. And I think in that same vein is watching people like you do. And I say this all the time to all my own kids and the players I work with. Like when you see somebody do a trick shot and flip their stick and catch the puck on the butt end, like they did that thousands of times. And I think that conversation that this didn't happen once, like I didn't do this. Like I didn't just become a nutritionist because I,
watch my dad cut a tomato. Yeah.
It's just the process of failure is so, it's just not seen in social media, right? That like I haven't seen anybody post, like I know when kids lose tournaments on weekends because their parents don't post anything on Sunday. Like, and if they won, it's like my phones were blowing up. My God, here's a championship. I said, how come? Because losing is as important as winning. And it's like, the fact is you made a comment.
It's more important, Mike. It's more important.
The comment, like I love with the guys I work with, a bunch of coaches I work with, and all these old timers, and like, we don't lose, we learn. And I think that's where, people like you, that the saying that, with great power comes great responsibility. I mean, you think about as a player and as a young person in this world that's working with, basically probably has every 14-year-old AAA hockey player in the country watching your site, the importance that you fail a lot and, and you've overcome those failures by persevering and working hard. And I don't think, and again, you said it, like out of thousands of videos you take all day, you only get 1% of them out there. And I don't know, I'd like to see the failures more than, and say, hey, listen, I failed at this 16 times so I could get this clip for you. And I think that's important for kids to see that, because I think most kids just as parents, right? I see somebody on their European vacation and I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could do that. I'm like, oh, I do that actually. So yeah. I think it's just, or that's just a choice that people make. So it's just so important, to Lee's point, the mental health piece, but the reality piece, that everything that happens in that 15-second clip is not the reality of what your day looked like. That's all. 100%. But other than that, it's great. And I think it's well, you're adding to the hockey, I guess genre on Instagram.
The lexicon, yeah. Mike, by the way, we say channel now, not
channel,
web, not site, but that's okay.
We'll say site.
We'll age you a little bit on that one.
But when I dialed up this morning to get
when I used my rotary phone to get on the interweb this morning.
Listen, I still have an AOL account, so I don't want to.
I was just gonna say, look, if we haven't convinced you to at least give this kid a look, I don't know what we were doing here today, but make sure you check him out. His name's Luke Croucher. Again, if you search for him online, you'll see him. His content really is fantastic, and he's making people notice, again, not just our podcast, other shows, other people. And Luke, again, just in closing, I just want to thank you again for coming on today. It's not easy in the busy life that you have to even just give us a couple minutes. So thank you for being here today and talking with us.
No, 100%. I'm more than happy to, at least, even if it just talks to one person today. I think that's the most important thing, is to do my part and give them back.
Well, luckily we have a massive audience, so you're talking to more than one person today. I know that hurt you.
That's good.
But that's going to do it for this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to check out the website, ourkidsplayhockey.com, for all of our episodes, and join our group on Facebook, Our Kids Play Hockey, where the conversation continues. And make sure to follow, once again, Luke Croucher and My Hockey Community, which he's created for all of you for free. So that's going to do it. Take care. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. We'll see you on the next Our Kids Play Hockey. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.